to the Tainted Tavern, the place where the drinks are always on tap and the gossip comes with it. And today I've got a whiskey review for you, and we are going all international again, concentrating on a whiskey, a single malt, that comes from a country other than Scotland, and that is Cotswolds English whiskey. So today we are talking about an English whiskey. I'd also like to mention my new book, which is currently available, A Dark History of Whiskey by Gary Dodds. This is truly a whiskey book like no other. It concentrates on the darker history of whiskey, and I will read you a section from this book during this video. So that's A Dark History of Whiskey. It's available now anywhere books are sold. You can get it online, you can get it in physical bookshops. You could even ask those lovely people at your local library to get you a copy. So today we're going to be talking about Cotswolds English whiskey. And in my book, I mention the fact that once upon a time whiskey was basically Scotch. Irish whiskey had fallen by the wayside for a great many decades, actually. In fact, Irish whiskey was almost brought to its knees, almost brought to its death, almost had its eulogy read before it's made a remarkable comeback. And you can read the full story of Irish whiskey in my book, among other stuff, A Dark History of Whiskey. But in the book, I mention in chapter 10, which is called The Wide World of Whiskey, not that long ago there was Scotch, with everything else coming in second. But these days that's not the case, and whiskey even, and I'm using that there because I make a big deal earlier on in a book about the different ways to spell whiskey, W-H-I-S-K-Y without the E, or of course W-H-I-S-K-E-Y with the E. So that line there alludes to a section from earlier in the book. So it may not make sense when I'm reading to you now, but trust me, if you buy the book, it'll make perfect sense to you. So, not that long ago there was Scotch, with everything else coming in second. But these days that's not the case, and whiskey even, is truly global. Not only are there high-quality American and Irish versions of the drink that are able to compete with the ubiquitous Scotch, but there are also decent, often superb malt blends and grain spirits coming from Canada, Japan, Wales, England, India, Germany, France, Mexico, and even further afield. The ancient art of distilling and aging fine whiskey is now a worldwide endeavour. And today we are going to just visit one of those places and talk about English whiskey. So that is Cotswolds Single Malt whiskey. It comes in an Anson presentation case here. Now this comes in at 46% ABV. It's not natural coloured, it's non-chill filtered. They brag about that on the case, and here it comes in a lovely presentation box, which is only fitting really, given that this is not exactly a cheap whiskey, though it's not overly expensive either. I think this retails for about £50 a bottle. I had this bottle here on special offer, and I think I paid about £45 for it. So that's a Cotswolds Single Malt whiskey, and the Cotswolds Distillery was established in 2014. So let's crack this Anson box open a minute and see what the whiskey looks like inside, and then we'll talk a little bit about the drink. So as I say, it's non-chill filtered. It's also got no age statement, so it's on the youngest end of the spectrum, more than likely. But it's got to be at least 3 years old, and considering it's not, there's no artificial colouring in there, it's quite a rich coppery bronze colour, so it may have several years on it, above the 3-year mark. The back of the bottle tells us that this is rich and fruity. Our Cotswolds signature single malt is the first whiskey made entirely in the Cotswold and is handcrafted in small batches from grain to glass, using 100% locally grown floor malted barley. It is doubly distilled in traditional copper pot stills and matured in premium casks before being blended and bottled. Right here at our distillery, we hope you enjoy the exceptional depth of flavour in this very approachable whiskey. Natural colour, non-chill filters. As I say, they make a big deal of putting that on the advertising, this natural colour, the non-chill filtered, which is good because at least it allows us, the consumer, to know with no doubts at all that we are getting an 100% natural product here. Let me just pop this bottle open a minute and we'll take it to the nose, and then we'll discuss, before we actually start to sample this hopefully delightful whiskey, we'll take a little bit look at the packaging, because let's talk about the entire product here. So it comes, as I say, in this handsome box. I'm just going to pop the cork there a minute. Now the initial aroma that I'm getting in the nose there is, it is fruity. It's kind of a dark fruit. Just leave that a moment. We'll pour a glass here using Penderyn glass, Penderyn blended Glencairn glass. So Penderyn, of course, is a very good Welsh single malt. So we're using a Welsh glass to help the English stuff along. Let's pour ourselves a glass there. Glug glug. Isn't there any finer sound in the world? If there is, I've not heard it yet. So yeah, it's holding it up to the light. It is, as I said, a rich golden, coppery, bronzy colour to the nose. Maybe fruit, but dark fruit. It's a fresh, zingy, some zestiness there. Okay, so Cotswold Brewery, established 2014. It's a single malt whiskey. It's won multiple awards. The awards here are listed proudly on the packaging. It tells us that it received a gold from the IEWSC. The World Whisky Awards, it also received a gold, and the Spirit Business, it also received a gold. There's some lovely information along the side here. The stills are shown here. So it tells us that the Cotswolds use our pair of traditional copper pot stills were made for us by hand in Scotland by world-renowned coppersmith Forsyth. Each run creates just over a barrel of beautiful light spirit. So each run through the thing can produce the one barrel. Our whisky is distilled using local malted barley grown for us on farms across the Cotswold. We support local agriculture and we value our close relationship with our farmers. That's good to know as well. And if you're like me and you believe that the terroir is important in whiskey, a lot of terroir is a term that's used a lot in winemaking, and it basically denotes the way a drink can be influenced, the taste can be influenced from the environment in which it was grown, the earth in which the barley was grown, the water which is used to make the whiskey. That's the terroir. It's a very important definition in wine, but in whiskey some people say the terroir is not so important, because whiskey of course takes a further step in wine in that it's distilled, and quite often double distilled or triple distilled, even, as is the case with some whiskey. So any influence of terroir may have given to the spirit is filtered out during distillation. That's interesting, and I don't know, but anyway, I think maybe the knowledge of where the barley came from, where the water came from, it kind of psychologically maybe allows you to experience some tastes from the spirit you're drinking. Our barley is malted for us by hand in Britain's oldest floor maltings, just south of us in Warminster, Wiltshire. We then mill it ourselves here at the distillery. The other side, it tells us that they source the finest casks from around the world for our whiskey, including first fill bourbon barrels from Kentucky, wine barriques from France and Portugal, and sherry casks from Spain. All barrels are used for full-term maturation, not cask finishing. We use our barrels only once, so they're all first fill. We respect our beautiful surroundings. We are committed to protecting our environment. Our spent grains feed local cows. Our stillage is turned into beedris, and solar energy helps power our distillery. We are very proud of our small but perfectly formed distillery here in the Cotswolds. We're open every day for tours, and we invite you to come and see how our whiskey is made. And then it gives you the website address for the Cotswold Distillery. So it's www.cotswoldsdistillery.com. It's a pretty handsome case, as I say, goldy with all the leaves. But then this is not exactly an expensive whiskey, but it's not a cheap whiskey, so presentation is very important. Now, let's stop waffling a minute and take it to the nose and then take it to the palate. But let me have a puff of this clan.
As I watch the sun descending and the birds fly home to rest, in the hush when day is ending, that's the hour when I feel blessed, smoking my pipe.
Well, as I say, 20 years ago, okay, now as I say, only a couple of decades ago, a single malt coming from England would have been considered a gimmick. You know, the single malts were synonymous with Scotland, with Scotch, although that's not the case these days, and we, as I've said, we are getting whiskies, single malt whiskies, even from all over the world. So let's try this Cotswold whiskey now. Now, I've never drunk this before, this particular one, although I did have a sample once of one of the Cotswolds while I was working on my book, actually. Another plug, A Dark History of Whiskey by Gary Dobbs. The distillery very kindly sent me a small sample bottle to try so that I could talk a little bit about the Cotswold whiskey in my book, and I did. But let's take it to the nose now. Let's stop waffling. Okay, to the nose you're getting figs, I think. Dark fruit figs. It's a very clean aroma. Take it to the palate. Oh, it really pays off in the finish. It's a warming finish. Spicy. Very, very good. As I say, 46 ABV. So what's that in proof? That's 90 something proof. The finish is exceptional. Warming at first, and then it leaves a anisey licorice in the back of the throat. Some dark fruits, figs, that licorice, anisey kind of tinge on the back end. Warming, you can feel it spreading out across my chest. It's very warm. I'm going to add a touch of water to this, not a lot, just a splash to break it up a bit. And as well as using the Penderyn branded Glencairn, so we've got the English liquid in the Welsh branded glass, we're going to use some Welsh water to tone this down a bit, because I do like, when doing a tasting, to try the whiskey neat. I mean, when I'm drinking whiskey at home of an evening to relax, I very rarely take it completely neat. I usually have it over the rocks with a little bit of ice, usually a big solid ice ball. The reason I do that is because it melts slowly, so it does chill the drink somewhat, but it doesn't water it down too much. But when I'm doing a tasting, I always take the whiskey completely straight, completely neat, so I can get the first impressions. Then I add a little bit of water, because I believe that the addition, and not only me, but a lot of whiskey drinkers believe that the addition of a little water breaks up the whiskey, because even at 40% ABV, and this of course is 46% ABV, but even at the minimum 40% ABV, which whiskey must be to be whiskey, that's a very strong drink, and the ethanol can act as a prison and trap in a lot of the flavours, a lot of the notes that you can get from your whiskey beneath the ethanol burn. So we're just going to add a cupful of water, not even a cupful, perhaps half a cupful of water. We're going to pour it into the drink. We're going to allow it to do its thing a moment, allow it to mingle, allow it to break up the whiskey, and then we're going to take another sip of this. So first impressions of this, it's a decent single malt. I mean, in terms of price, it's up there with the likes of Lafroy, Glenfiddich. It's around the mid-price of £50 a bottle, so it's up there with those. So it's sitting alongside some heavy hitters, and it's more than speaking up for itself. It's definitely a decent single malt whiskey. I mean, I'll certainly drink this whiskey from time to time. It's pretty decent. Alright, the water's done its bits now. Let's talk about the legs on this. The legs are very substantial. I can see them running down the glass there. That's always a good indication of the mouthfeel you're going to get from your whiskey. Decent legs usually equate to a decent, rounded, almost oily whiskey. So let's take it back to the palate. After giving it a nose. Now, right away, I'm getting a lot more fruit now, some citrus. That's wonderfully balanced. Citrus, figs. The licorice that I was getting initially is not so pronounced now, although I do think there is a slight licorishness to this. That's very, very, very tasty. You can see why it's had so many awards bestowed upon it. It's a bloody decent whiskey. Very nice indeed. Cotswolds Single Malt Whisky. It's an interesting whiskey. It's very complex. It's not one-dimensional at all, so it'd be great, perhaps given time, to try something of this at the 10-year-old age statement, the 15-year-old age statement, to see what it progresses into. But as it stands, this is very, very good. It's a damn decent dram of whiskey. Citrusy, malty, some cereal grains on there, the taste of cereal grains. Anyway, it's a single malt, of course. There's no grain in here, no grain whiskey in terms of grain whiskey. There's no grain in here. It is all malt. Comes from the one distillery as well. It's not single cask, so it could be several malts produced by Cotswold, blended together or vatted together, as they call it when they mix in a single malt. They don't call it blending, they call it vatting. It's pretty much the same thing, though. So, but it's grainy in a sense of, when I say grainy, I mean breakfasty, oaty. You're getting that cereally taste to it. It's got that citrus. Citrus, I think, is the overriding taste to this whiskey. Some licorice, a sweet licorice on the back end. That is a fantastic single malt whiskey. Absolutely fantastic. So that's Cotswold Single Malt Whiskey. It's fantastic stuff. It's really good. It's a really nice whiskey, and if you fancy, if you drink single malts and you tend to stick towards a Scotch single malt, Scottish whiskies, then you're playing on a very narrow playing field when you could be branching out and experiencing so much more. I tend to drink a lot of single malts now from countries other than Scotland, although there are still some fantastic Scotch single malts. But it's no longer the case that Scotch single malts are the one single malt that rules them all. That's no longer the case. I mean, I've drunk some fantastic Japanese whiskey. I've yet to try a really decent American single malt, although I'm reading a lot in the whiskey press, so a lot of good single malts coming out of America now. In terms of American whiskey, I tend to lean more towards the bourbon. I do like bourbon whiskies. I love Buffalo Trace. I love Wild Turkey, Eagle Rare. And I've also drunk several ryes. I've even drunk Jack Daniels, which is ubiquitous, isn't it, for American whiskies. But I've never tried an American single malt, and that would be interesting to do on this channel going forward, as I've drunk a lot of the Welsh single malts because I'm a big fan of Penderyn, and Damile, of course, which is coming through now, is fantastic stuff. And as I mentioned earlier, Aber Falls is another great Welsh whiskey, Welsh single malt. So I find it's nice to be, in a sense, a whiskey tourist, and not only wander through the hills and the islands and the crags and the glens and the mulls of Scotland, but to wander further afield and sample everything that the single malt category can offer you in terms of experience, in terms of taste, in terms of... Marty, my bulldog for some reason barking. Ruin my flow then. In terms of whiskey, because whiskey is a truly complex drink. It's got so much to offer. It's not a drink to be sat down glugging a bottle until you're falling down drunk. It's a drink to be savoured. It's a drink to be appreciated. It's a drink to really be experienced. So, Cotswold Single Malt Scotch Whisky. Now, I don't really do no scoring system on this channel. All I'm going to say about this stuff is it's top quality pour. You got a really good whiskey here. It's really nice. It's citrusy. It's malty. It gives you a warming feel on the back end with a sweet licorice. It's fantastic stuff. So cheers, Salandri, adios, and please click subscribe, leave a comment, and don't forget to buy my book, A Dark History of Whiskey. It's available now, and if you purchase a copy of this book, then you'll help me support this channel, because this is how I make my living, folks, from my books. So I'm not asking you to donate or buy me a coffee. I'm not under Patreon or any of that. I don't want your money, but I do want to give you a book for a price, of course, from bookshops, from libraries, from Amazon or other online sources. A Dark History of Whiskey by Gary Dobbs. Please get yourself a coffee. Cheers, Salandri, adios, and see you soon!